Welcome to the Complete Node course. My name is Mosh Hamadani, and I am super excited to be your instructor for this course. I've done my best to create the most comprehensive and up-to-date Node course that shows you all the modern ways to build applications with Node. And I hope by the end of watching this course, you're gonna be a superstar Node developer. Are you ready to get started? Then let's jump in. Alright, now let me give you a quick overview of how I've structured this course so you know exactly where you can find what. In the next section, we'll be looking at the module system, which is one of the fundamental concepts in Node. You will learn how to create your own modules, as well as how to use the modules built into the core of Node, such as operating system, file system, HTTP, and so on. In the third section, we'll look at Node Package Manager, or NPM. Over the next two sections, you will learn how to build RESTful APIs using Express. But throughout these two sections, we'll be storing our data in a simple JavaScript array. Because before we look at storing data in MongoDB, you need to clearly understand asynchronous JavaScript. And that's the topic for the following section. In this section, you will understand how asynchronous code is different from synchronous code. We'll look at various patterns for working with asynchronous code, such as callbacks, promises, and async and await. Once you understand asynchronous code, then we'll look at storing data in MongoDB. So the next three sections are all about MongoDB and Mongoose, which is a library we use to store data in MongoDB. After that, we'll look at implementing authentication and authorization, including role management using JSON Web Tokens. Next, we'll look at handling and logging errors, which is a very important topic in building real-world applications. So up to this point, we have a RESTful service with authentication, authorization, error handling, and logging. So over the next two sections, we'll look at unit and integration testing. If you have never done unit testing before, don't worry. I'm going to take you from the ground up and teach you everything step by step. Next, we'll look at test-driven development, which is a way of building software by writing tests first. You will see how I will build a new feature using test-driven development, or TDD, step by step. Following that, we're ready for deployment. So you will learn how to deploy this application to Heroku. Node.js, or Node, is an open source and cross-platform runtime environment for executing JavaScript code outside of a browser. Quite often, we use Node to build backend services, also called APIs, or application programming interfaces. These are the services that power our client applications, like a web app running inside of a web browser, or a mobile app running on a mobile device. These client apps are simply what the user sees and interacts with. They're just the surface. They need to talk to some services sitting on the server or in the cloud to store data, send emails, or push notifications, kick off workflows, and so on. Node is ideal for building highly scalable, data-intensive, and real-time backend services that power our client applications. Now you might ask, but Mosh, there are other tools and frameworks out there for building backend services, such as ASP.NET, Rails, Django, and so on. So what's so special about Node? Well, Node is easy to get started and can be used for prototyping and agile development. But it can also be used for building super fast and highly scalable services. It's used in production by large companies such as PayPal, Uber, Netflix, Walmart, and so on. In fact, at PayPal, they rebuilt one of their Java and Spring-based applications using Node, and they found that the Node application was built twice as fast with fewer people, in 33% fewer lines of code, and 40% fewer files. And more importantly, they doubled the number of requests served per second while decreasing the average response time by 35%. So Node is an excellent choice for building highly scalable services. Another reason for using Node is that in Node applications, we use JavaScript. So if you're a front-end developer and know JavaScript, you can reuse your JavaScript skills and transition to a full-stack developer and get a better job with better pay. You don't have to learn a new programming language. Also, Because you can use JavaScript both on the front end and on the back end, your source code will be cleaner and more consistent. So you will use the same naming conventions, the same tools, and the same best practices. And finally, another reason for using Node is that it has the largest ecosystem of open source libraries available to you. So for pretty much any features or building blocks you want to add to your application, there is some free open source library out there that you can use. So you don't have to build these building blocks from scratch, and instead you can focus on the core of your application. Next, we're going to look at the architecture of Node. So in the last video, you learned that Node is a runtime environment for executing JavaScript code. But what is a runtime environment really? Well, before Node, we used JavaScript only to build applications that run inside of a browser. So every browser out there has what we call a JavaScript engine that takes our JavaScript code and converts it to code that a computer can understand. For example, Microsoft Edge uses Chakra, Firefox uses SpiderMonkey, and Chrome uses V8. And it's because of these varieties of engines that sometimes JavaScript code can behave differently in one browser or another. Now, a browser provides a runtime environment for JavaScript code. For example, you probably know that in browsers, we have the window or the document object. These objects allow us to work with the environment in which our code is running. Now, up to 2009, the only way to execute JavaScript code was inside of a browser. In 2009, Ryan Dahl, the creator of Node, came up with a brilliant idea. He thought it would be great to execute JavaScript outside of a browser. So he took Google's V8 engine, which is the fastest JavaScript engine out there, and embedded it inside a C++ program and called that program Node. So similar to a browser, Node is a runtime environment for JavaScript code. It contains a JavaScript engine that can execute our JavaScript code. But it also has certain objects that provide an environment for our JavaScript code. But these objects are different from the environment objects we have in browsers. For example, we don't have the document object. Instead, we have other objects that give us more interesting capabilities. For example, we can work with the file system, listen for requests on a given port, and so on. We can't do stuff like that inside of a browser, right? So, in essence, Node is a program that includes the V8 JavaScript engine plus some additional modules that give us capabilities not available inside browsers. We can work with the file system or the network and so on. Both Chrome and Node share the same JavaScript engine, but they provide different runtime environments for JavaScript. Now, I've seen people comparing Node to C# or Ruby or some other programming languages, but these comparisons are fundamentally wrong because Node is not a programming language. It's like comparing a car with an apple. By the same token, Node should not be compared with frameworks such as ASP.NET or Rails or Django and so on. These are frameworks for building web applications. Node is not a framework. It's a runtime environment for executing JavaScript code. Next, we're going to look at how Node works.